proactively, and diversity and inclusion issues as well. So we love that all. And today we have a guy right on board with all of that. He hopes for a better world here, a better Western society, and we are working towards the same ends in what we do. He is the author of the provocative book, get this, before I even name his name, well, I Am Christ. And I'm not talking about me right now. I'm talking about Michael Sherlock. He wrote the book, I Am Christ. Let that sink in. Why would anybody use that title? Well, we're going to ask Michael. And I know that he's going to come up with some great answers to that. So it's a provocative book, and, it follows with the text as well. He talks about Western society, sometimes in not the most ingratiating terms here. Western society, according to Michael, has been built on the traditions of primitive superstition, misogyny, homophobia, xenophobia, rape, infanticide, and a whole host of other arcane and fictitious atrocities. Well, you be the judge of this. Michael's not straying too far from the truth. We can see it in our everyday lives, and it's not just in our everyday lives. We can go back in time, Western society. I mean, it all has happened, and we're going to get an in-depth view of what Michael means by all of this when he begins to talk. And these have spawned insanity. Insanity, underscoring the West. Michael's coming out flat and saying it. We live in an insane society, okay? This is, I'll tell you, it's going to be high-level talk here, and it's going to be very, very interesting and entertaining and informative talk. So I want you to stick around. And I want you to run to this website, too, and investigate the things that Michael does. Go to michaelsherlock.org. Again, www.michaelsherlock.org. You can visit him on Facebook, and Facebook is all around. Michael actually lives in Japan, and Facebook is in Japan as well. It's international, people, as you know. Go to facebook.com/michaelsherlock.author. So it's easy to access. Just go to facebook.com/michaelsherlock.author. Michael, this is a pleasure to have you aboard today on People of Distinction with Al Cole. We're going to talk it up here, brother. How are you today?
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a pleasure. I am into the provocative talk. You can say anything you want to here. We're going to get out some truth, and we're going to get out some real strong messages to my listeners, and they're used to it. So I want you to feel free to talk it your way from the way that you see it. Let's just get a little bit of background here first. I want you to introduce yourself to my audience and a little bit of your roots. You're somebody who was raised in Australia. Now you're living in Japan. I'm sure you've been to the U.S. and lived in the U.S. at certain points, and you're aware of Western society as much as Eastern society, and you're in a position to make that comparison. Tell us a little bit about your roots and a little bit of the inspirations growing up that led you in the direction that you're now taking. Tell us a little bit about Michael Sherlock.
Sure, Al. Well, as you said, I grew up in Australia. I'm from Sydney, Australia. And I grew up under the sole care of my father because my mother had addiction problems and left when I was one. So my father took care of me as a single parent. And he was not very religious. He was what you might call agnostic. But, he remarried when I was about 8 years old and married into a Filipino family. And so we stayed in the Philippines for a little while when I was young. And I grew up around very loving and caring aunties who were all Catholic and, very religious. We used to go to church every day and all that. And so it was very nice. But at the same time, I started to see the absurdities of religion at a young age and began to question my scripture teachers. I went to a school, it was a public school, but at the same time they had scripture once a week, which was a religious class or Christian class. and I began to question my scripture teachers on some of the absurdities I saw from the stories they were telling about Jesus Christ and the origins of Christianity. And I guess I've always been what Professor Rick Herrick would call a divergent learner, meaning I have to see it for myself. I have to be presented with sufficient evidence before I believe something. And I don't just take things as they're given to me. I like to take them apart and check them and make sure they work. And yeah, so I've always been a bit that way. But yeah, I came from a multicultural family, and as I said, I lived in the Philippines for a short time, and then came back to Australia. And then we moved to Tasmania in the south of Australia, which is a small little, what you might call, it's the Bible Belt of Australia, very small island to the south. And my father became the president of the AIDS Council, which was an organization helping people who were suffering from HIV and AIDS. And he administered, helped administer care to people who were suffering from that disease. And I remember one occasion that I think may have been the trigger for some of the work that I'm doing now, was we were visiting an outpatient, someone who was being taken care of in their own home. And he was in the advanced stages of AIDS. And we showed up to his house, and his windows were smashed in, and there were anti-gay slogans spray-painted across his walls, and his place was tossed over, and there were pro-Christian signs all over his house. And so members of the local church had come to his house and harassed him. And when we walked in, he was laying on the floor in a ball, curled up, shivering, terrified, sick. And it just struck me, the inhumanity that we can commit when we have strong beliefs, especially religious beliefs, the type of insanities we can commit under this demon, this possession that we have, this psychological demon we call, these religious beliefs. It really, I think it shook me to the core. And also, my father became quite angry, as you can imagine, and I had to stop him from going down and tearing down the church, because he was, he was in a mood to tear something up, because it's injustice, it's horrible. And my father worked with many of the people who promoted gay rights in Tasmania, and one such person, Nick Toonan, he was a very close friend of my father's. Him and another fellow called Rodney Croon took Tasmania to court, or to the UN. And because at that stage in the 90s in Australia, in the 1990s in Tasmania, being homosexual was a crime. It was a crime. You could be locked away in jail for it. And so my father saw this as a very grave injustice, and so he stood behind his friends and tried to help remedy that. And again, I think that's part of why I'm doing what I do today as well. Seeing this injustice. And when I look at the roots, I want to find what's the origin of this injustice, what's the origin of this insanity. And in a Western context, it comes from the Bible. In a Western context, it comes from the Bible. We see the same insanities in Eastern societies, and we see the same insanities in Middle Eastern societies. I'm not saying that they're exclusive to the West, and that only the West is manifestly insane. I see the human race as rather insane. We have such beautiful potential as a species. We're so intelligent. We're so loving and caring. But at the same time, we have this pernicious side to us, this malign, this chronically pathological side to us. And I think, and I could be wrong, but this is my thesis, that it stems from exaggerating our beliefs. That is, having an acute focus on our own beliefs to the detriment of the welfare of ourselves and society at large. And so this is what my work is all about. And I Am Christ, The Crucifixion, Painful Truths is the first volume in a 3-volume series that attempts to critique the Christian religion. For as I mentioned, I see that as the root of many of the insanities in the Western world. And as I come from the West, I thought it best I start there. That's I guess, some background into why I'm doing what I do, and my book. And so, thank you very much for asking, Al.
There we go. So we've made the connection here between your ideological stances and the name of your book, I Am Christ. Christianity bringing down not only the Western world, but every part of the world. I'm thinking that you were saying where Christianity has taken hold. Let's talk about this here. And let me throw out something here to my listeners. All right, people, I don't want you to get all ruffled feathers here if you happen to be a Christian, or if you happen to be somebody who maybe isn't a Christian but a supporter of Western culture. This is a show to explore ideas and to also ultimately explore possibilities. And we will get into that aspect of the show a little bit later, too, possibility thinking. Well, you can't explore possibilities unless you explore actualities, the way it is. And I don't think anybody who even defines themselves as a Christian would say that it's all gravy in a Christian world. We know that it isn't. And there are things that Michael is going to say that I will agree with. There are things that Michael is going to say that maybe I won't agree with. There are things that you will agree with, you won't agree with as my listening audience. The point is this: honor the fact that he's saying them, and that he can say them on my show, People of Distinction, because we believe in that sort of broadcasting. And we believe in getting out messages that we believe are truthful, and then you're the judge, people. You're the judge, and I know that you're already on board with this because you're a supporter of what I do. And you make me one of the most popular shows in digital media, one of the most popular talk shows around. And I appreciate that so very, very much. So Michael is going to speak his piece here, and we want to hear what he's going to say here about Christendom. Let's put it that way, because every once in a while there is a little bit of a difference between Christianity and Christendom. Christianity might be taken over by the state and special interests, and we know that term special interest, and it becomes Christendom. And is there a difference, Michael? Maybe I should start out with that question. Is there a difference between Christianity and Christendom?
Christendom, as far as I'm aware, just describes the broad community of the various different denominations of the Christian religion.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity is the religion itself, the belief system, which is what my book is focused on, I guess, addressing. But Christendom, I think, as far as I'm aware, merely refers to the land or the geographical, kingdom, you could call it, of those lands that are Christian.
Exactly,
it
and
all
see,
the denominations,
Yeah, and then metaphorically, because I want to make sure that my question is understood in the spirit that it was meant to be.
Sure.
Many people will use the term Christendom to go beyond just the geography, but they will talk about the way that geographical area, politically, socially, whatever, has used Christianity or sometimes misused Christianity to get some of the wrong messages out about what Christianity is. And maybe there is a difference. In our world, we know, and in the United States, we know that a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, well, I'm a Christian, but I'm not your type of Christian because you've misused Christianity. And I want to get back to the original spirit of Christianity. So that's what I'm talking about right now, and it might be actually better to maybe just put it that way. Is there any sort of differentiation in your mind between the spirit of Christianity and the way it's been used in our world, or way it's been misused in our world?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Al. A very, very good question, and it's a matter that is subject to ongoing debate. As far as I'm aware, Christianity is a religion of the book, meaning it gains its authority, its doctrines, everything comes from the book, that is the four Gospels and the epistles of Paul. Now, when we're saying, well, what's the true nature of Christianity? What are the true teachings of this Jesus Christ, who in my book I propose may not have even existed as a historical character? What are the true teachings of this allegedly historical person? Textual scholars are still battling with, well, what were the original words of Jesus? We don't really know. And as I mentioned, we don't even know that he was a historical character. We have some reason to think that he may have been a human being, a regular, everyday, human being, Joe, like you and me. Mm-hmm. But we don't know exactly what his teachings were, if he existed. And the fact that we have about 38,000 different denominations of Christianity.
Really?
Yeah, about.
Wow, that's a huge figure. I wasn't aware of that. 38,000 different denominations of Christianity.
Yeah, so if that kind of gives you an idea that, belief is in itself is just an opinion on the truth, and I have them, you have them, we all have beliefs, but 38,000 different sects shouting at the others saying, well, you practice Christianity wrong, we have the correct Christianity. That's chaos.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is chaos. And when we take it a step further, we say, okay, well, there's Christianity, there's Islam, there's Judaism, and each of these guys, and Hinduism and all these other religions, and each of them are saying, well, no, you have the wrong religion, I have the right religion. Now, some religions are a lot more accommodating than others, but these monotheistic religions, in my opinion, these monotheistic religions are very exclusivist. That is, my way, the only way, your way is the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And within the scriptures of these religions, we see built-in devices to demonize difference. The devil is responsible for anything that conflicts with my belief. And this is where I think this is true Christianity. I think, and I've said this in the past, that the fundamentalists, those who are out spreading the hate, who hate the gays, who hate the, this group and that group, these are the Christians who are practicing their religion in the most correct form according to the scriptures. Mm-hmm. Because when you go back and read the scriptures, you'll see this hate is in there. But preachers will gloss over this stuff. They won't bring it up too much. You won't hear it too much in church, and not too many Christians, as far as in my experience, not too many Christians go and actually read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. They don't read the Gospels horizontally and compare the stories told by each of the false authors, because we know now that, well, Mark didn't write a Gospel. We don't know who the author of Mark was, or Matthew, Luke, John. We don't know who the authors were. They were falsely named in the 2nd century. They're fraudulent from the beginning. They contain forgeries within those Gospels, that is, verses and texts that were not original to those Gospels. Forgeries. They contain lies, outright lies. So when we have a belief system built on these sandy foundations, as the false author of Matthew once said, that whenever you build something on a sandy foundation, well, it's going to fall down, it's going to collapse. And we find that collapse in the insanity that is the 38,000 different denominations, each screaming at each other, persecuting homosexuality. The misogyny, the inherent misogyny of the epistles of Paul, for example, St. Paul, who says women should just be quiet and obey their husbands, who should cover their head. They shouldn't show their hair. We attribute the hijab and the burqa, and many Western people say, well, Muslims, they're wearing the hijab and it's terrible, it's oppressive to women. And yes, I agree. However, we need to look at Christianity as well, because a lot of Islam comes from Christianity, and we find this same misogyny in Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to begin to form a more healthy outlook on life, in my opinion, and that is we need to start treating everyone as equals. But how do we do that if we believe an all-knowing God has given us a different dictate, has told us that we should not treat women equally as a man? I should not treat my wife equally. I shouldn't give her equal status. It says so directly in the scriptures. I should not allow homosexuals to get married, and I should not support that because an all-knowing God has taught me that. When this belief happens in the mind, insanity can be justified. That is, and also the ends will justify the means, no matter how insane the means might be. We look back to the Spanish Inquisition. We look back to the persecution of the Cathar people, who are a group of Christians that were persecuted by the Vatican, by Rome. You know, their children were thrown on the fires, and just absolute disgusting behavior, because it's in the scriptures. An all-knowing God taught me this is the way, and so now I can do anything to achieve that holy divine end. And now we've got a tempered society in the West. That is, we have a secular society. The church has been somewhat separated, at least on the surface, separated from politics. Okay, we still see it very, very intrinsically in politics, but it's been separated legally from politics. And so we don't have that level of insanity we had when the church was running the show, when the religious were running the show. So I think that we're improving as a society the more we become secular, the more we move away from religious thinking. And here I should define, there is certainly a difference between spirituality and religion, but I'm not a believer in spirituality. I like to call it psychology, but that's my own bias. I could be completely wrong. So
yeah, I understand.
But yeah, that's basically, I guess, where I'm coming from.
Now, I'm going to underscore some of the things that you were talking about. And listeners, hey, people, I want you to understand something here. I know that some of my listeners are thinking, well, you know, if there wasn't a thing, if there were not a thing called Christianity, would there be a thing called misogyny or homophobia? We'll get into that too, etc. Is Christianity a means to an end, or has that been the whole kit and caboodle here? I'm going to put it to you this way, as far as the theological aspect, and not so much maybe the political or social aspect here, and we'll get into that too. One thing that you should question maybe about any religion that is telling you about hell and burning and suffering, would you impose that as a good parent on one of your children? Would you ever say to your child as a good parent, well, if you don't believe in the things that I'm telling you, if you don't do everything that I'm telling you, and if you have a mind of your own, you've dishonored me, and not only will I disinherit you, I mean, it only begins there. I will kill you. And not only will I kill you, I will torture you as you're dying. And not only will I kill you and torture you, but it's going to never end. I mean, this is for eternity, kid. If you don't toe the line exactly the way I tell you to, or exactly the way that I believe that you should. Let's get a little common sense in here, and this is very common sense. I mean, you wouldn't do that to your own child and call yourself a good parent. I don't think you'd call yourself a good father, good mother here. And further, if you saw your neighbor doing that to his kid or her kid, you probably want to call the cops on your neighbor, because, you know, it's very easy to call these things abuse these days. Check out some of the dogma here, and whether you're a Christian or not, and, you know, these days, you go to Facebook or any of the social media that asks anything, you know, with spiritual content or religious content, there are very few people that will just come out flatly and say, I'm a Christian. It's always other. It's always followed by -other or /other, which means that we are creating our own religions here, our own spiritualities, which is not a bad thing. Each person needs to think a little bit independently, depending on the inner consciousness involved. But these are some of the things to think about right from the get-go. the way that we judge a God should be the way that we judge man. And if it's not consistent, if God's ideology, way of doing things, is not consistent with what we know to be perfectly honorable and perfectly moral and ethical within our own lives, then we can't make exceptions that way. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, people. And let's call a spade a spade. So I'm going to throw that back in your arena right now. Are you on board with what I just said, Michael?
I think you framed it very beautifully.
Yeah.
And in a way that makes it very relatable for everyone. That was very well put, Al. We would not commit the insanity that we imagine the God of the Bible has. We would not tell our children, believe me or die horribly, and I'll torture you forever and ever. Because if we did, we would be insane, and the state would come and rightly take our children from us, because that would be terrible. So,
absolutely.
Do we believe that an all-loving God would do this? Here is the logical gap. Okay, he's all-loving, but if you don't love him back, he will kill you horribly.
Yeah.
This is
now,
crazy kind of love.
I want to explore this with you, Michael.
Yeah, sure.
Is that God or is it man talking? See, we can invent things here. I'm a spiritual person, and I don't align myself with any particular religion. In fact, I've created my own religion. So I can talk like this. But I want to find out your reflection, and I know my listeners do too. That hateful aspect of God that you just delineated, mostly the Old Testament here, the God of fire and brimstone and hell and, is that the real nature of God if there is some sort of plan for us as human beings, if there is some sort of formative force, and some people call it a source energy or whatever one wants to call it, is that the kind of God that really would have created this universe if there is a God? Or is that man talking, and I don't mean to say man, every single human being on the planet. I'm talking about forces right now. I'm talking about I'm talking about nefarious forces that might want to foster that idea onto people. Maybe some forces, political, money forces, we can talk about some institutional forces here, very high forces that want to control people. Maybe they throw out misconcepts here. Is that part of what could be going on as well?
I think so. One thing we'll always notice when we look at the gods of different people is that the gods tend to reflect the societies that they've come from. And more than that, they reflect the psychology of the people that they've come from. And so when we look at, you raised the God of the Old Testament. There are many in there actually, but yeah, when you look at that particular God, Yahweh, he fits the profile, the psychological profile of the ancient Hebrews of the day. He fits their psychological profile. He was born from their mind, in my opinion. And this is one thing I've said. I wrote a brief quote about this situation, and I'll get back to the nefarious aspects, but I said that the reason the gods have always reflected the societies from which they were spawned seems to me to be rather obvious. God is a mere projection of, an allegory for, the human mind. Those who have taken this allegory at face value have perverted reason, truth, and humanity, in order to credulously transform a fictitious allegory into a literal truth, and in so doing have wrought chaos upon the earth. And there's a quote I wrote quite a while ago, but as far as the nefarious aspect, Napoleon Bonaparte once noted that, religion is the one thing that stops the poor from murdering the rich. And I'm not saying that anyone should be murdered,
I didn't know that quote.
But he makes a good point. He makes a
absolutely.
It's psychological oppression.
Yeah,
so
the opiate of the people.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have said religion is the opiate of the people, which falls right into line with what you're talking about.
Yeah, and if you look at colonizing nations, for example, look at Britain, for example, or Spain or Portugal, when these colonizing nations went around, they brought religion in the right hand and a gun in the left hand. And what they did is they oppressed the people psychologically with the religion. They put Christianity on them. And Islam did the same when they conquered territories, but they put their religion on them to keep them psychologically oppressed. And with the gun, they exploited the lands. They took everything they wanted. And there was a quote, it's been attributed to various different people, but where I read it was attributed to the big kahuna of Hawaii. And he said that when the white man came, they gave us their religion. They told us to close our eyes and pray. And when we opened our eyes, we were holding Bibles, and they had our land.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is what Napoleon Bonaparte was speaking about as well, that nefarious aspect where it's used to exploit. It's a tool for exploitation, and it's used in this manner. And we can see evidence of that throughout history. We can see evidence of that today. It's a mechanism for oppression, psychological oppression.
Yep.
And the best form of oppression, the most useful form of oppression to a tyrant is psychological oppression. Because if you can oppress someone psychologically, if you can get them to believe that they're free, they won't rebel.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't see the cage, if they can't see their own cage, they're not going to try and break out. So they're stuck within a prison of their own making of sorts, a prison of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is one of the most nefarious aspects of religion, is it creates these mental prisons in which people are subjected to and then go ahead and subject themselves and others to. And we pass this virus on to our children, to our loved ones. This is, to me, it's insanity. It's insanity. And the Indian philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti once said that it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Yeah. I love your quotes, brother. Absolutely. You got it down here. We're talking to Michael Sherlock, and we're just beginning here, author of a great and provocative book, I Am Christ. Oh, boy, go to this website. You be the judge, michaelsherlock.org. You're going to want to investigate here. And Michael is a guy originally from Australia, now living in Japan. And he claims that Western society has really done a number here. But it's not just Western society. He's homing in particularly on Christianity, which is international, promoting misogyny and homophobia, xenophobia, and rape and infanticide and everything here. So, we have to really give this serious thought, people, and I know you have in your everyday lives. You can't live to adulthood without having, reflected on these things. So we're doing that here on People of Distinction today. Michael has a nice Facebook site that you can run to as well, facebook.com/michaelsherlock.author. Go there too and, figure it out. We're going to turn the corner into something that I touched on, Michael, just to clear the air, to find some limitations here, delimitations. A little earlier in the show, I touched on, would misogyny still exist and homophobia, etc., if Christianity did not? Now, that is actually a crux matter here that, we could really get heavy duty in. I'm sure that there are books written on that subject. To what extent is Christianity the cause here of some of the things that we all do not like, that you list here, misogyny, homophobia, and xenophobia, rape, infanticide, etc. Would they still exist if Christianity did not exist?
They certainly would, I think.
Yeah.
I wrote an article once called "Christianity is merely the symptom of a greater virus," and it's a very harsh title, I admit, but I think it's a symptom. Religion is a mere symptom of a greater virus, and this virus we know as egocentrism. And egocentrism is the loving of one's own beliefs above anything else, above anyone else's, above the welfare of the self, the welfare of others. It is a sickness of the mind that loves one's own beliefs and sees one's own beliefs as the only correct position. Now, it sounds like I'm committing the self-exclusion fallacy, which is, well, how can I say this without having a belief? This is merely an idea I'm presenting. I could be wrong. I concede that. But what I see as the question is that you've asked me is Christianity, or if we didn't have Christianity, would we have misogyny in these things? Yes, we would, and we see it beyond Christendom. We see it in Islam, we see it in Hinduism, we see it in all religions, we see it in all societies. So yes, we would certainly have it, and part of the reason I think we have it is because we're not a mentally stable species. I think we have a long way to go before we can evolve into that pure love, that enlightened state of mind, which loves knowledge, loves learning, loves humility. Because one thing the true believer lacks is humility. The scriptures preach humility, but to be a believer in that religion, you have to be arrogant. You have to be egocentric.
Yep.
My God is the only God. My belief, my religion, my, me. This is the egocentrism. And this goes beyond Christianity. This goes into the realm of nationalism. And I've in the past I've referred to nationalism as a form of religion as well. You know, this is inherent in nationalism, ethnocentrism, racism. We have all these pernicious and nefarious aspects and qualities to our mind that we really need to address. And so, yes, I'm coming out and I'm coming across very negatively. But I think a certain amount of cleaning needs to be done. And the person who's willing to do the cleaning is not going to be very popular, because we have to put the mirror on ourselves and say, right, it's time to clean up. It's time to wake up. We're hurting ourselves. We're hurting each other. And for what? Thin air, not even that. A belief. Is that really worth killing and dying for? Is it really worth oppressing the rights of people who are certainly deserving of those rights? I mean, when I hear homosexuality is unnatural, I hear this all the time. This is the most illogical thing I've ever heard in my life. It is absurd to say that homosexuality is unnatural. And yet, on the other hand, say that angels and demons and witches and warlocks are perfectly natural. Well, I know which one I've seen more of in nature.
Right.
I know which one I've witnessed more with my own senses. I haven't seen too many demons and warlocks running around society, but I have seen homosexuality, and it's existed since the dawn of time. It exists not only in humanity, but it exists in thousands of species as well. It's perfectly natural. And the fact that people, many homosexuals have committed suicide because of the social pressure,
right,
derived from this discrimination, which finds its roots in Western context, in the Bible, in other contexts, in other religious traditions, and other myths.
You're making excellent points there, Michael. And I'm going to underscore something again. Michael is not talking hate talk here, people. And I think you know it. You're people of distinction, listeners, and you know better. Michael's not talking hate talk here. He's talking straight talk. And he's talking actually very logical talk. And he's talking everyday talk here. We know about the things that are going wrong in our world, and maybe always have gone wrong, that we can correct. And I'm going to put it this way. Where are your heroes coming from, people? See, one of the things, and this is in my book, The Spirit of Romance, we get our heroes on the outside. See, Michael is talking about an outside world right now. Well, believe me, that outside world is always going to go wrong. It doesn't matter what kind of religion. It doesn't even matter what kind of social structure. It could be a benevolent social structure, and that outside is still going to go wrong because we are inside creatures. We're both. But we need that energy on the inside. We need that love on the inside, that sustenance on the inside to keep the outside going. Most of us, we get all of our cues from the outside. What we love in sports, it's one team against the other. What we love in show business, it's one superstar against the other. What we love about music, oh, you're a rocker, man. I can't go with that. I'm down with R&B. Or, I'm into classical music. I'm above you guys. Or jazz. Or come on. There's beauty going on all around our society if we can have the eyes to see it. And that eye should be focused on the inside, where all beauty occurs. That's energy love. And when we start to get to know ourselves a little bit better, and I will put it this way, people, drop out a little bit. Drop out of some of the external influences that you might consider titillations. Oh, I don't want to drop out of this. I don't want to miss the action. I want to have a good time. Well, baby, the best time that you can possibly have is peace. Enjoying the peace and comfort of beautiful energy on the inside, love. When you start to develop that, guess what? You know where your hero is going to come from? Number one, you are going to be your own best hero, and it's not the way of ego that Michael was very fairly and very realistically talking about. We don't have to be chauvinistic about what we know to be the truth about the beauty of who we are. We're chauvinistic about something that we think is the truth on the outside, and we want to get on the bandwagon. Well, no, the bandwagon lives in us, of the beautiful bandwagon that everybody is on because they were born to begin with. Everybody, if we get on board with inviting humanity into our consciousness and saying, hi, how are you? Tell me your story. What do you love about life? And we can do that on the inside. We can take a little bit of alone time every day to ask humanity what they love. And I bet you it's not going to be rape and homophobia and misogyny. I don't care how deeply entrenched somebody is in saying that this is bad stuff for humanity and gays, should not be allowed to marry and women should be kept in the home and everything. Even the most entrenched person in all of that nonsense, you get on his inside or her inside, where the consciousness really resides, you hit something and they just want to live. They just want to love. And they just want to be free of all of the burdens that they have put themselves upon. They've let themselves by having the wrong heroes on the outside. Become your own best hero by thinking how beautiful the human race really is. Be a hero for the human race. And I guarantee you, when you look outward, you're going to see people, you're going to see the good in people. You're going to see people for what they really are. Wonderful creations. Now, I'm not saying that Michael has to agree with this. I agree, not in the theory of human beings are filthy rags. I believe that human beings are beautiful creations. And we go wrong once we get too far entrenched with all of those things that are telling us, do this, do that, stand up for patriotism, stand up for this country against that one, stand up for your neighborhood against this one, stand up for this against that. If we really examine it, it's somebody trying to make some money off of us, somebody else's interest. Yeah, stand up for this so that you can be one of my contestants. Stand up for this so that you can, buy this ticket to this Super Bowl game. Stand up for, Dallas against New York or something. And that's all fictitious. It's illusionary. Stand up for this so that I can make a buck off of you, so that I can control you better. And we can't stand for that if we are really intelligent human beings. We have to go in the pathway I think that Michael is going as well, even if he doesn't buy everything that I'm saying. We have to be independent thinkers, people. You know, you can create things about you that nobody ever has, and you can be proud and give it back to other people, and they will understand if it's done through integrity and real love. Am I making any sense here, Michael?
You're making perfect sense, Al. What you've just said describes the reason why I called my book I Am Christ. You underscored it beautifully, and if I was fast enough, I would have written everything you just said down.
It's all in my book. It's the spirit of romance.
That is absolutely in accordance with why I've titled the book I Am Christ. No, I do not think I am Jesus Christ, some Jewish prophet. No, I do not. I don't even believe one existed. He may have, he may not have. That's incidental. I am Christ. If the Western society was built on a myth called Batman, I would call the book I Am Batman. It's about being your own hero. It's about not projecting that hero archetype onto every different Tom, Dick, and Harry, so that, as you say, Al, they can come and make a buck off you, or get you to pick up a gun and aim it at someone else. It's not about that. It's about finding the internal hero archetype, about cutting free from those leading strings of the masters who are the belief peddlers and the faith wielders. It's about being your own hero, taking responsibility for your own mind so that you'll be free enough to love everyone. Epicurus once said that when you hold your own child and you feel love towards that child of yours, realize it's not just your child that you love, it's all children.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very good philosophy we need to start to really bring to the forefront in our species. That is, we need to love people regardless of race, ethnicity, nationality, whatever the stupid, superficial, dividing, edifice is. We need to break these walls down. We need to cut through this nonsense, and we need to begin to create a world that is tolerant and accepting of difference. And the only way, in my opinion, that I see this happening is if we let go of our egocentric beliefs, cast them into the fire. For truth is more important than our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Belief is a matter of choice. Belief is a matter of choice, and so many people forget that. They mistake their beliefs as truths. And this is where a lot of the problems come in my opinion. But what you've just said regarding that, internalizing the hero, I think it is a very important message, Al, and I think you said it beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. We are really kindred, and, we come about it through different means, but that's okay because everybody has the right to be an individual and actually express him or herself in their way, and then come to that beautiful synergy where now we are talking the same talk, feeling the same emotions and energy, and we have reached that point in this beautiful show here. Again, people, go to this website, michaelsherlock.org, and join him. Whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, whether you are religious or not religious, don't get sidetracked by that stuff. Join him in his plight and in your plight to make this world better. Understand who the enemy really is. As Michael was saying earlier, religion, it's just a symptom here. But it's used by some of the forces that really are after you and really after your, you could even say your soul. These forces we have to fight against, and these forces have to do, unfortunately, on our planet with power structures, and money is one of the biggest power structures. Am I telling you not to work anymore? No, of course not. As long as we do have to work in order not to be homeless, in order to not be dead, because we have to eat a little bit. I'm not telling anybody not to work. I'm telling you to understand structures a little bit more than you do, and maybe you've already been there and done that. Maybe you do understand. continue on in your good work in understanding power structures, sexual structures, and things that are really behind a lot of the religious indoctrinations. These are the things to really key on here. Michael is keying on those things. Facebook.com/MichaelSherlock.author. Go there too. Support what he does. Tell him, hey, brother, okay, I'm with you. And create that dialogue. Michael, we have a few minutes left in this. What a great show here.
I've enjoyed it.
I want to end the show with some possibility thinking.
Okay.
That's really what I always aim for in my shows, building it to that point where now we go into possibilities. We've defined terms. We've talked about reality here. We've talked about some of the symptoms. We've talked about the downright evil forces and everything. Now let's talk about some solutions. How do we get from where we are to where we want to be? Now, we're not going to get there through religion. You've made that plain. We're not going to get there by throwing money at the problem. That's what Congress and the Senate try to do, but it's probably smokescreen money and smokescreen methods there. How do we, in our human family future, get to where we really want to get? If Michael Sherlock had to get us there, what would Michael Sherlock prescribe for our future as a human family?
Wow. That is a brilliant question. One that I couldn't give you an adequate answer to. That is a beautiful question. I think the best questions are unanswerable. And you've presented me with one of the best questions I've ever been presented with. It's a brilliant question. Wow. That's going to stay. That's going to linger in my mind for a long time. I think what we need to do is we need to break down the divisions, and these divisions are our beliefs about our religions, our nationality, these nationalistic beliefs. We need to break down racism. We need to break down the inequalities that have arisen in our society, the psychological illnesses, as I call them. We need to start to see each other as human beings, above and beyond any other criteria, any other defining characteristic. We need to start to look at each other, look into our eyes, and see that the person standing across from me is me. We are one species. We need to unite. We need to cooperate. We need intelligent cooperation over mindless conformity.
Mm-hmm.
That is, we need to realize it's in our best interest to intelligently cooperate with one another, to give everyone equal rights, regardless of, whatever sexual proclivity, regardless of race, gender, whatever the superficial characteristic may be. We need to see each other as human beings. And in my opinion, and I could be wrong, the only way to do that is to move beyond selfish thinking, selfish believing, as I call it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way I see it. I don't see someone being able to hold on to an egocentric belief system like Christianity or Islam or any of these belief systems. I don't see them being able to hold on to that belief system and truly look into the eyes of someone who isn't a member of that group in an equal manner, because they see that person manifestly as lower, as evil, as wrong. But can we just look at each other as human beings beyond all of the shallow edifices that have defined us since the dawn of history? Can we start to try something new? As Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Mm-hmm. We're not getting different results. Can we try something new? And I think we need to embrace change. I think the more we resist this change, the more damage we do to ourselves and each other. And I think we need to embrace change a little more. And we need to get over our fear. I think fear is one of the largest spawners of these beliefs. Fear is we're scared of the uncertainties of life, so we retreat within a belief. We come to a conclusion because it's easier for our mind to form this belief than it is to keep wandering and searching. But we need to embrace that fear. We need to overcome that fear, and we need to be courageous. I think we need a little more bravery and a little more love, and we need to let go of our fear. And I think when that happens, possibly, then we'll moved beyond egocentrism. We'll move beyond our selfish beliefs, beyond religion and nationality and all of these other shallow edifices. We'll move into a time where, who knows, we may just end war. We may just see an end to war, not in our lifetime, I don't think, but, in the future when we become slightly more intelligent, when our minds evolve to a stage where we don't see each other as different because, well, you wear different clothes or you belong to a different religion or any of these silly, superficial, differences. I think we need to start to see each other as human beings. And yeah,
Absolutely.
That's my opinion.
Absolutely. And I'll just add my 2 cents to that as well. Very well put, Michael. When I'm out there on my speaking engagements, New York City and New Jersey, I will tell people, and I can say it pretty quickly, give the fast lane meditation here. I will tell people, all right, look, take your right hand, approach it to your heart, but before you touch your heart with your right hand, do the unthinkable. Kiss your own hand. Now, create that nexus between the physical and what we could call the spiritual, in terms of that heart energy, the greatest electromagnetic center of the human body. Honor your own hand for being a facility of your life, as if it had a life of its own and needed to hear, I love you, needed to hear, you mean something, needed to hear, thank you. But don't stop there, people. Go even inward. I talked about going inward a little bit earlier with your consciousness. Guess what? You can go inward in your body, and you don't need a medical doctor to tell you that. You can, once you kiss your hand, imagine your hand inside, massaging the beautiful areas of your body, massaging the beautiful heart that you have. Think of yourself as a baby, firstborn, and given these great births, given these gifts of life through birth. And you can even visualize the inner person, the inner body. We're too used to the outer body, the cleavage, how hung are you, things like that. Oh, you got nice eyes. I like your hair, your image, the way you dress. Well, all of these things are all right, and they could be great sometimes. But greater still is the inner body that keeps you alive every day, and start to absorb the energy within there. See if you can visualize maybe that little white blood corpuscle that might have saved your life last night, people, and you didn't even know it. But once you begin to have gratitude for what's really keeping you alive, what's really keeping you alive is not the state out there, it's not the country that you're in, it's not the religion that you believe, it's not any of that stuff. It is the beautiful facility that was given to you at birth. You go back into that facility. Thank you, white blood corpuscle. That white blood corpuscle, I believe, has a consciousness and is going to burst love back to you. But that's your body. You're the recipient of that love. You can feel it. Guess what? Everybody loves to feel love, even the emotion of love. But love is even more than that. It's an energy. And once you're energized by that beautiful emotion of love, well, you can give it to other people, as I said before. That's another way to do it. Consciousness, visiting your inner body, things that we never do. Nobody ever does that stuff, and if we did, that would be part of my prescription. If Al Cole had anything to do with it, human beings would be living on that plateau. Guess what? We wouldn't need religion. because we would have love in our worlds, because we spark it first within ourselves. And we would be on board with the things that Michael is talking about. I don't think there would be a lot of misogyny around, because we would connect with if we're men, with the feminine side of us. If we're women, with the masculine side. We could make love with our masculine side if we're a woman within us. We could make love with the female side of us if we're a guy. We can feel that love energy, making love with itself. And these are the things. We wouldn't need homophobia in our world. We wouldn't have to be afraid of strangers, xenophobia in our world, because we could relate to the outside world coming into us and kissing its consciousness. We could kiss in the same way that we're used to kissing our lover's lips. We could create love on the inside and kiss the consciousness of our human family. We can do that very, very easily. All we have to do is just take a little bit of alone time, get to know who we really are. Thank you, Michael, and thank you for allowing me to say what I just said. It's your show, but boy, you sparked me to say some of these things.
I'm really happy you said that, actually. That was a very positive message. I think it's very important that embracing the feminine if you're a man, the feminine that's been so suppressed in the patriarchal societies, that we're not only oppressing the female as a member of our species, we're oppressing that feminine side of ourselves as well.
That's right.
And I think to be psychologically healthy, we need to be balanced. And I think you just underscored that beautifully with what you said.
Yeah, balance is the word. We need balance in our lives, and we need eyes to see, not eyes that are blinded. And I'm going to tell you, people, Michael's work is in the direction of light, and he's in the direction of having people think without that crutch of the outside institutions doing the thinking for that person. So support what he does. Go to his website, michaelsherlock.org. Go to his Facebook site, facebook.com/michaelsherlock.author. And get on board with what Michael is talking about and order that book, I Am Christ. And I think there's going to be a lot of great reading in that. Thank you, Michael, for being my special guest on People of Distinction today. Boy, it has really been an honor, a pleasure having you here, and I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
No, the pleasure has been all mine, Al. You're a very wonderful host. Thank you. Really appreciate what you're doing, Al. It's great stuff. I really love the words you're saying. I love the message. Good stuff.